I'm really excited to be introducing our very first key feature for 7.3, which is going to allow you to create your digital fabrics in Clo with just a few pieces of information. It's pretty exciting. It's been a while in development from our talented development team, and I'm really pleased to be able to share it with you today. So let's get into the how-to. First of all, you can access the fabric creator in a few ways. First of all, you can right-click any fabric in your object browser and you'll find the item to go into your fabric creator. It's also possible to access the fabric creator from the editor drop-down menu. That will take you directly there and populate a brand new default fabric in the object browser, which will then be customized. So let me show you how it all works. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is enter in your information. So that would be the name of your fabric. I'm just going to call it new dress, your supplier, which I'll give as Clo, and your owner, which I'll just put as 3D designer. Now, all of this information will be carried with the fabric and it will be populated there in your property editor. Now, once you've done that, you can set about creating your fabric, and we just need 3 pieces of information: fabric type, its composition, and its density. And those 3 pieces of information will go to create our digital fabric. So as you can see, we have quite a large range of fabric types to choose from. You can just scroll through. If you're looking for something specific, you can hit your keyboard and that will take you straight there. The composition will change depending on the fabric type that you've selected. And again, you can just scroll through to find what you're looking for or hit your keyboard to find something specific. And notice each time as I make an update, our fabric drape is being automatically reflected above. Now, you will need to enter a percentage that equals 100%, and Clo will helpfully give you a little warning if you haven't met that. But notice that you can continue to adjust these. So if you're not working on recreating a specific fabric, you can experiment, and every time that you make a change, the drape in the preview above is updated so you can see exactly what your final drape is going to look like. And the exact same goes for density. Look, as I drop it from 300 to 180, the preview window is continuously updating. So I know exactly what my fabric drape is going to look like, which is really cool. And when you are finished with creating your fabric, you just need to hit apply. And it's at that point that your fabric up here in the object browser is going to be updated to reflect all the properties we just created, as well as the information that we entered. And notice that it also states it's a V2 fabric created in the fabric creator. If I compare it to the dress fabric, it tells me this is a V1 default fabric. This is going to be important for those of you who are using this in industry. You can always know the source of your fabric, how it was created. And we also have a range of view options. So right now we're looking at a circle cylinder. You can drape it on different models. So here's how it would look on a square cylinder. And we also have a cape, which might feel a bit more intuitive. It's your choice. And over on the other side of our window, we also have the ability to look at our drape from different perspectives, which can be really helpful. And you can also set your own custom perspectives. And there is a little lock icon there, so you can use that if you want to lock your view. Now I'm pretty happy with the drape. I'm happy with my view. Maybe I'll make a few small adjustments, change the density a little bit. And then I think we're about ready to move on to thinking about our textures or the surface of our fabric. Now you might notice that there's a little wand icon there. I'm just going to point it out, and I'll be coming back to that in our next clip. This is our AI texture generator. It can be used in the fabric creator, and I'll go over that in our next key feature. But one really cool thing is that Clo gives you some preset texture maps. So if you toggle this on for each fabric type, you're going to get 3 different texture presets to choose from. You just download it, click it, and up above you can see how it's going to look. If you like it, you can press apply, and notice that over in the property editor, all of those textures are populated. You also have the freedom to bring in your own texture sets if that's something that you have ready to go. So I'm going to go with this one. Now the really cool thing is that all of your texture map settings are available here. So I'm just going to choose a normal map and bring it in so we have something to work with. And everything that you see here in our map menu is the same or very similar to what we see in the property editor. So you can adjust it and customize it however you like. You've even got the color picker. You can adjust all of your shadows and intensities. Everything you're used to seeing in the property editor will be available here. And if you hit apply, you'll see it's over here now populating my fabric properties. Now, once you're happy, you can see how it looks on the garment, of course, by applying the fabric to your pattern. So I'll just select the pattern piece, press apply, simulate and see how it looks. Now, let's say you're satisfied. Well, you can just leave it as it is, but if you want to continue editing because you're not happy with the result, you can go back to the fabric creator at any time and it's going to populate with all the settings that you had established when you created the fabric. So that includes all of your texture settings as well as the fabric drape itself. So if I wasn't happy with this coloration, I want to go back to how it was before, I could do that. If I wanted to continue to adjust the drape, it's all the same as I left it. So I can keep playing around. And if I want to see how it looks on my garment, I would hit apply, apply the fabric to the garment itself and see how it looks. Now, if you happen to have a little bit of expertise or are just fond of experimentation, you're also able to get under the hood and actually adjust the physical properties for this fabric manually. So if you hit this spanner icon, it's going to open up your fabric detail. Now, the fun thing about this is that you can adjust all of your fabric properties individually just by playing around with the dials, and you'll get a live update for how this is going to affect your drape. It does take you away from the original fabric and the accuracy of that fabric that you originally defined. So you can hit this refresh button at any time and it's going to take you back to scratch. And once you are satisfied, you can hit save. This is going to save you out as a EFAB file, of course, with all the physical properties and the texture maps attached, and you'll be able to reuse this at any time. So if I hit apply and close and head into my Clo library for my fabrics, I can type in and find the fabric that I just created. So a really amazing feature. It's going to have lots of potential applications, whether you're an industry or an independent creator. We will have some more detailed videos coming up on our YouTube channel that will go into the Fabric Creator in depth, so do look out for those. Our second key feature for 7.3 is another exciting AI-driven feature, and that's our AI texture generator. It's going to allow you to generate seamless textures with just entering some prompts and a few parameters, which I'll be showing you. Now, this one's a little bit different than our ordinary features as it's not yet included in the official release. It's still in its beta testing phase. So there's already a large group of beta testers out there, so hopefully this will be really useful for you. And if you're interested but not yet participating, you can find links to that on our website, and it is open to all license types. Individuals, academic, enterprise, everyone is welcome to participate. And after gathering your feedback, we will bring it to a Clo official release, which will be available to all to use. And one more explainer, the way that this will work is that you'll be assigned a certain number of credits, and each time that you generate a texture, 1 credit will be deducted. And if you're not involved in the beta service phase, you're still going to see the icons associated with the AI texture generator. However, they will be inactive, which means they're not going to be connected to a server and you won't be able to use them. With that explainer out of the way, let's dive in and have a look at the feature. In order to use it, all we need to do is select the fabric in the object browser, and here is the magic wand icon. It's going to open the AI texture generator window. And as we saw in the previous feature demo, you'll also find this icon within the Fabric Creator window. First, I'll give you a very quick tour of the window. Up the top, we have our options for fabric type. So you'll find a large selection here to choose from: canvas, jersey, corduroys, and so on. Underneath that is content type. So that's going to influence the style of our generated texture, and I'll explain that a little more in a moment. The pattern size is just going to determine the size of your repeat. And then you've got the area where you can enter your text prompts, and I'll give you some tips about how to do that. And below that is where our generated texture will appear. And finally, we do have a history tab, which means that you'll be able to access all of the textures that you have generated, toggle through and continue to use them. But let's get in and start creating. So the first thing to do is to define your fabric type. As you can see, there's a large range to choose from, and this is going to help to define the characteristics of your fabric and give you the full set of texture maps. The next thing to do is to select your content type. So you've got 3 options to choose from here. So none is a simple option, which is just going to mean that the generated texture will only take your fabric type and the text prompt that you enter to influence the results. Whereas if you select style or pattern, this is going to give you a particular genre of results. So I like to think of it as style being something a little bit closer to Photoshop filters, and I'll show you some examples. And then pattern is a little bit more based around typical textile finishes like tartan and so on. So let's have a look at some examples so it makes a bit more sense. So the first category is style. This is really great for print development. Think of it like your Photoshop filters. You've got vintage, watercolor, and other styles to choose from. And the pattern category is going to let you choose from a range of common textile finishes such as paisley, tartan, polka dot, stripe, and that sort of thing. So there are what's going to influence the final look of the texture based on your prompt as well as your pattern. And when you do select one of these options, it's going to give you an additional drop-down menu. So if you were to choose style, which I think of as like your print development and your more of your Photoshop filter and genre-based development, then you can select from any of those options there. And when you select pattern, it's going to give you the options related to those more textile-based designs, paisley, polka, and so on. And the last thing there is just your pattern size. So this is really just defining the size of the repeat as it's going to appear on your garment. And of course, you can continue to edit that later on with your edit texture tool. Now let's get in and do some text prompting. I'll start simple, go with a bit of a tropical feel and enter the key phrase palm trees. Then I'll hit generate. At this point, 1 credit is deducted and you'll be told if you've got a position in a queue. Sometimes the server might be more busy than others. And here is our generated texture. To see it on our garment, all you need to do is hit apply and you can check your results in real time. Now, some tips on prompt engineering. You want to separate your key terms with a comma. So if I want a bit of a sunset feel, I might use the word yellow sky. If that's the coloration that I'm looking for, hit generate, and it's going to combine those concepts. I am working with no content type, so it's just the fabric type and my text prompt at the moment that are influencing the results. And if you really want to emphasize a particular term, put it in a parenthesis or brackets, and it's going to more strongly weight the terms that you've put in the brackets. If you want to extra emphasis on that, you can use double parenthesis. And now yellow sky features a lot more strongly in the generated results. And your history is still here, so you can toggle through and access anything that you've already generated, hit apply, see how it looks, which is a really great concept development tool. Another really useful feature for concept development is this little dice icon. And when you hit this, your fabric type will stay the same, but it's going to randomize your content type and your text prompt. So if you like something that it's come up with, you can hit generate. You could edit the prompt if you wanted to, and just a fun way to get some initial design ideas. And it's important to know when working with the texture generator that it is randomized results. So as I hit generate without changing the prompt or the options, I'm getting totally different results, all of course within the same mood and genre, but they are different. Now let's say you liked one of these more than the other, but it's still not quite there. You're actually able to pin it, hit generate again, and it's going to look at that image and give you a new iteration within that same style. So this is really great for concept development and then design development. You want to start narrowing your options down. Pin it, it's going to come up with something very similar, And if I compare these two results, it's given me some different movement in the leaves, a bit of a thicker border, and I can compare the two. And one of the great things about using the texture generator is that you're not going to be fixed with these results only, because you can continue to develop it with the Edit Texture tool. You'll be able to open it in our texture editor. Maybe you want to recolor it, add in some blend layers, maybe some new design elements, and you can use some of our seamless integrations with opening it up in other software, whether that be Photoshop or otherwise. Another really handy feature is that you can close it off. So if you are experiencing a bit of a wait in the server queue, which might happen from time to time, you can just close the window down and continue about your work and come back to it. So that's it for the AI texture generator. It's a really fun feature to work with. Again, you are able to sign up for the beta testing via our website, and it will be available for all to use in a future Clo release. And the lucky last key feature for Clo 7.3 is 2D linked editing. Starting from 7.3, you're now going to be able to link and edit patterns simultaneously. We can do it with pattern outlines and internal lines, and we've made it super easy to use. So there's actually quite a few ways that you can make a link, including based on how the pattern is already sewn. We know 2D is a huge part of your workflow, so I'm super duper excited to be sharing this one with you today. So I'm going to go over everything in detail, of course, but just a few notes on the workflow to begin with. We start by establishing a link, and we can do that in a few different ways. And we have a brand new tool called the Edit Link tool, and that enables us to basically change the direction of the linking. So I can add value to two pattern edges at the same time, or I can add to one and subtract for another. And the Edit Link tool is going to allow us to control that direction. And the other thing to point out before I start demonstrating is that the linked editing works with segments and not with points. And finally, when we're working with linked editing as of version 7.3, the right-click options for precision movement will not be available. You do need to work with free transformation. And hopefully this will all become crystal clear as we proceed through the demonstration. So let's get stuck into it, starting with the Edit Pattern tool. Our trusty Edit Pattern tool can be used for so many things, and you will be able to use it to establish linked editing, particularly helpful if the pattern is not already sewn. So start by selecting one of the patterns, right-click, and you'll find this new option to link lines. Once selected, you'll need to go ahead and select the line that you would like to link it to. And notice that as I hover over the pattern edge, I have these randomly colored lines with arrows. It looks a little similar to how our sewing connections look. And notice as I hover the mouse over either end, the pattern is the colored line connection is showing the direction. So just like sewing, our pattern linking can be established with a direction, so be mindful of that when you're establishing your link. And you can view if a link has been established at any time simply by clicking on the segment, and the same dotted colored line with the arrows at the center will be displayed. And now that I do have that link established, I'm able to edit the main body of my pattern. My facing piece is being edited, and I still have symmetry on the opposite side of the body. So you can supercharge your workflow with symmetry and linked editing, but unlike symmetry, with linked editing, you can have patterns of different lengths. Obviously, my shoulder at the facing and the main body are different lengths, and they're not sewn. And that's going to be relevant for something I'm going to show you in a moment. But let's have a look at our Edit Link tool. You'll find that nested with your trusty Edit Pattern tool. It's got the little link icon, and with this we're able to make changes to our link, including flipping the direction and a few other things. So with this tool in hand, I can click on any segment, see the link, and I have the options to unlink, flip direction, and add sewing to the linking. So this is going to be particularly useful for pattern drafting stages. If you've established a lot of links, you can automatically sew them. you can flip direction. And as I mentioned at the outset, this is going to allow you to add and subtract value from patterns rather than moving them in the same direction. Or of course, you can unlink it as you saw. So now that I've flipped the direction, I can remove value from one pattern and add it to another. And notice as I bring the shoulder down on the facing, it is adding that value to the main body. If we go back to the Edit Link tool, we're also able to use the property editor to turn flip direction on and off. So I'll turn this back off because of course they should be moving in the same direction for a facing and a main body, and I'll right click and I'll add sewing. And if I go back to my edit pattern tool and again edit the pattern, they're once again moving in the same direction. Now at the moment my pattern pieces, although they are at different lengths at the shoulder where I've made the link, but using the Edit Link tool, I'm able to have these segment links match in length. It works very similar to the Edit Sewing tool. Grab the endpoint, drag and release to resize it, or grab it in the middle to move it. And now the link for my shoulder and my facing are matching. So that's the case for a facing piece. Let's look at another case example next. And as you can see in the 3D window, I have a skirt in my outfit. So I think you're going to be very pleased to know that it is also possible to link multiple line segments to one other segment. And I'll be using the Edit Pattern tool again as an example for this demonstration. So following the same process as we did with the facing, we click on our first segment to establish the link. Then to establish a link with multiple segments, simply hold down Shift and of course pay attention to those connections and those arrows, directions. And now as I edit the single pattern, both patterns are edited together. Now, another really helpful feature with our linked editing is that we can establish links with patterns that have already been sewn very easily. So the center front piece here is sewn to two different patterns. And if I get my Edit Sewing tool and have a look, this sewing connection can be turned into a link. Right click, link line. And if I switch back to my Edit Pattern tool, you can see that I've established a link and they will move together. It is very user-friendly, but just be mindful that if the sewing needs to be deleted for any reason, it's going to remove the link. So with my Edit Sewing tool, I can see options about linking in my right-click menu. If I delete the sewing, I will no longer be able to see a link because it's removed with the sewing. So really easy to apply with sewing, but if you are making modifications, that's a useful thing to keep in mind. And moving right along, we're also able to use linked editing with the Trace tool. This is going to be really useful for workflows that involve facings or pockets. So in my back pattern here, as you can see, I've got a back neck facing marked out. So with the Trace tool, as always, just select all parts of the new pattern edge, right click, and you'll now find this option to trace it with a link. And then when you do so, as always, just pop your pattern piece down and we'll know that there has been a link applied because it will have these dotted line connections with the arrows at the center. So if you need to make any modification to your facing piece, it's going to edit both of your patterns together. Really, really useful. And in terms of your workflow, the best way to approach linked editing is if you're drafting and you haven't sewn your pattern pieces, using the Edit Pattern tool will be the best way to establish your links, and then you can use that to add in your sewing automatically. As we demonstrated, if it's linked, we can right click and add sewing to that link connection, or alternatively, go about your normal construction workflow, and once all of your pattern pieces are sewn, then you can use your sewing to establish a link. So depending on your own preference or depending on which part of the pattern and construction workflow you're in, you're going to have both of those options available to you. And we will be creating a detailed tutorial on linked editing, so keep an eye out for that on the YouTube channel. We've made a number of updates to the Closet library within Clo just to make it a little easier to navigate and to find what you're looking for. So we've made 4 updates and I'll go over them one by one. So the first one just relates to the display of thumbnail images in the Closet and Connect tabs, just to make it a lot easier for you to find what you're looking for. So before version 7.3, when an item was downloaded, the front view of the item was displayed. However, it's now been updated so that the thumbnail image is always displayed, whether it's been downloaded or not. This is just going to make it easy for you to find what you're looking for and decide if you want to download an item, as you'll be able to see it clearly in the thumbnail image. Now, the next update is that we have added an all contents folder within your Closet tab. So previously you needed to navigate through your workroom contents or your company library folders and then search for what you're looking for. But now with the all contents folder, if you type anything into the search bar, it's going to search all of those folders for you. So just another quick little update to make your life a little bit easier and make it a lot quicker to find what you're looking for. And also related to our search feature, previously it would pull on information within the file itself, and now it will pull on information from Closet. And also before, if there was no search results, there was no message to tell you there's no search results for the terms you've entered. So now when you search, it'll be able to identify how it's been saved in Closet itself, and if there are no results, it will tell you, and you then know, okay, I've got the wrong SKU code or the wrong style name, and you can try again. And finally, we have made it a little bit easier to bring your Closet or your Connect items directly into the workspace. So previously you would select something, download it, so it would be on your local drive, and then double click it or drag and drop it. So download it, then open it. Now you can drag and drop or bring it into your workspace in a single action, and that's going to automatically download it and you can open it straight away. Again, just another tidy little update to make your workflow nice and efficient. And another neat little improvement for 7.3 is that you'll now be able to hide your layers in the 3D window, just like you're already able to do with Freeze, Strengthen, and Solidify. So there's lots of reasons that you might want to maintain a pattern piece on a separate layer for a good duration of your development, and its appearance as bright green can be a little bit distracting. You want to see the garment clearly. So if I select these belt loops and go over into my properties editor and move these up a layer, they will be displayed in bright green. Now, if I want to maintain them on this layer and continue working but view the garment clearly, you can now right click into the 3D background, and with Show Hide Color, you'll now see the option for Hide Layer. And here it is here. And now the layer is hidden. If you want to bring it back at any time, right click once more and Show Layer. So the very first feature to share for our 2D improvements is match measurement. And I know a lot of you are going to appreciate this. It's going to make it super quick and easy for you to change the measurement of one segment based on the measurement of another. Perhaps like I'm going to demonstrate today, you need to even up your side seams. So before you needed to remember the measurement for one side, then change the length, hope that you noted it down or remembered it correctly. Now you'll just be able to select any 2 lines and measure them up so that they match either the longer or the shorter side. And I'll show you exactly how that works. All I need to do is select the lines I'd like to match up, and here I have varied side seam lengths. So my back is a little bit different than my front. Now if I right click under my match up item, you'll find a new match measurement option. You'll then receive this pop-up, and this is going to allow you to decide how you'd like to match your measurement. So you can decide whether or not you want to match your measurement to the shorter or the longer of the two measures. So in my case, if I select the shorter side, it's going to take the back shirt side seam and apply this to the front. Whereas if I choose long from the drop down menu, it's going to take the measurement of the front side seam and apply it to the back. Next, I'm able to set the direction. So by default, it's going to be based on the start, and that's what's setting my direction towards the hem. Now, if I wanted to evenly distribute in both directions, I could choose center. And finally, I could move it towards the armhole by selecting end, which of course would not be the right way to treat this particular edit. So let's move it back to the start. And now my edit is complete. Let's go ahead and simulate, and we can check the results in the 3D window. And my measurement has been beautifully matched, and my side seam is now even. And the great news is that yes, this will absolutely also work with your symmetric pattern pieces and your layer clones. A really great improvement, and one that I think you're going to appreciate. The next key feature that I know you're going to appreciate is that from 7.3, you can now add all of your top stitching and puckering with your sewing. So your workflow is going to feel a little bit closer to a physical production setting, and it's just going to be a lot quicker to go and add in all of your top stitching details. So we're going to use our edit sewing tool to do this. And as you can see, my pattern has already been constructed. And in my property editor, there's new items for me to toggle on: top stitching and puckering. Once selected, you'll see that I'm able to select from the drop down menu, and that's going to include any top stitching that's already in my object browser. Top stitching tab is going to be automatically opened for you. So if you do want to make a change to any of your settings for a given top stitch, it's going to be really easy just to jump over and do that. And if I jump back into the seam line that I was working with, we'll also find the same options to extend, to define your corners and your offset. And right at the end, you can see an option to decide on your placement. So one or both seams. And that's in the Dropbox item there. And underneath there, you'll find the option to also toggle on puckering. This is going to work exactly the same. You'll have the option to choose from any puckering styles that you already have there in your object browser. If you want to edit those, you can do so by selecting it up in the object browser. And as well as the top stitching, you'll also notice that you've got the same individual properties that you can vary for your extension and offset. And if we zoom on in, you can see I've applied puckering and top stitching, and being able to set it all up really easily just with my sewing. Similar to sitting down at the sewing machine, do it all at once. But of course you can still use all of the separate tools when and if you need to. Now you might be wondering, can this be saved, or do I have to enter it every time? The answer is yes, you can save it. And we have a new file extension, SSP. This is going to save everything that you see here in the property editor, including your sewing type, your angle, the tension, any top stitching and puckering applied. So just hit the save button, save it to your Clo library, and you're free to use and reuse. How easy is that? For 7.3, we've also made a number of improvements to guidelines that are going to allow you to be able to work with them with a lot more precision. So let's go ahead and turn on my ruler visibility. And of course, to create a guideline, you just need to drag it out of the X or Y ruler. So the first improvement is that you're now able to offset a guideline that you've created, and you'll find this in your right-click menu, Offset Guideline. And this will bring up a precision box, and you have a number of options for offsetting your guidelines. You can add different amounts for each offset, and this is going to be really useful for pattern drafting and other precision pattern making. Now the next update is that you're now able to lock individual guidelines. So before 7.3, you really only had the option to lock all guidelines at once. Now you're able to select an individual guideline, right click and lock. And the last update is that you can also move with precision. So just move your guideline, and while moving, right click and you'll have this handy precision dialog to work with. So offsetting, locking and moving with precision just got a whole lot easier. The next update for 7.3 is our clone as pattern feature just got a whole lot smarter. You'll now be able to clone shapes with sewing, and you don't need to select the whole shape. As long as it's closed in the place that you're cloning it from, and you might notice here I've got some pockets drafted, so I'm going to clone that. Chloe's going to be able to work out based on our selection which sides need to be sewn and which need to remain open, which is pretty cool. So let me show you exactly how that works. First of all, I have some baselines here. So I'll start with the trace tool and I'll select those edges. So that's my pocket edge. I'm not selecting the top half, which will remain open. Now with my edit pattern tool, I'll just select those edges. Now before 7.3, you would need to select the entire shape in order to trace it as a pattern. From 7.3, Chloe's got a lot smarter, and it's going to recognize that I have a starting place as a closed shape, and I'm just going to select the edges that I want to be sewn. I'll right click and I'll clone as pattern with sewing, and now place it down, and here it's completed the shape. So it's taken that top baseline and recognized it from the main pattern. And if I put that down and have a look at the sewing, you can see it in the 3D window, and you can see here only the edges that I selected to trace have been sewn together. It's completed the shape, and if I superimpose it over, I have really quickly and easily created and sewn a pocket from some baselines on my pattern. How cool is that? Now you can also clone a pattern with all of your sewing edges connected, and you can use the transform pattern tool to do that. So to demonstrate, I'm going to place a label on the back of my top here, and I'll use an internal rectangle tool to create the label. I'm going to click once so I can use the precision dialog and enter in the width and height that I would like. And okay. Here's my internal shape. I'll pick it up with the transform pattern tool. Right click and you'll find exactly the same option here to clone as a pattern with sewing. Place it down, and we can see all of the edges have been sewn down. I can quickly superimpose it, and just like the pocket, I've really quickly and easily created a pattern and sewn it all together. How easy was that? The next improvement for 7.3 is that you'll now be able to select pins in the 2D window. So you can notice here I have a pin. It's been used to fix one of the creases here, and this is a situation where it can be really tricky to actually find the pin in the 3D window in order to delete it. So from 7.3, if you've got one of your pin tools active, you'll be able to then select it in the 2D window. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll grab the pin tool. Over in the 2D window, you'll now be able to click it, and it will bring up the gizmo over here in the 3D window. So I know where it is, and if I want to delete it, I can then right click and delete the selected pin, or move it around with the gizmo, whatever you need to do. And if it's been created with the pin box or the lasso, it'll select it as a whole group as usual. So just a little bit easier to find and work with your pins in 7.3. Next, we've made a few improvements to how you're able to work with darts in Clo, and the first of those is that you'll now be able to snap to the center line when you're moving your dart apex, and that's going to maintain your dart leg length, and they'll be nice and consistent. So previously, when you were free transforming, your dart legs would fall out of alignment. You need to go back and correct them, as you can see here. But now if you hold down Control, while you're repositioning your apex, it's going to allow you to move along the same slope that your dart has been created, and it will maintain your dart leg length as long as you are moving it along that center line. And it will work very similar to the guidelines you have available when you hold down Shift and free transform your pattern. The next improvement for darts is that you'll now be able to add additional curve points when you're using the Shape Dart Cap feature. This is going to be really handy for more complex patterns and design lines. So previously, when you were shaping a dart cap, you had 3 curve points to work with, making it a little bit tricky for certain patterns. However, with 7.3, you can now add as many curve points as you would like, and you have a lot more freedom when adjusting a curve. So for example's sake, I'm going to put a dart on my back armhole here. You have options to add with fullness and move the value elsewhere on the pattern. I'm just going to chop it out with the Add Dart feature. Here I've got Shape Dart Cap toggled on, and here this is where we would ordinarily adjust the seam line, and you've got 3 there to start with. From 7.3, if you would like to add more curve points, you just need to click along the line and you'll be able to position them and move them just like before. So if you have a particularly complex pattern or a bit of an unusual seam line, you'll now have a lot more flexibility for shaping your finished seams. Next, on to our avatar updates. And the first that I want to go over with you is that we've made some improvements to how you're able to register accessories. We've expanded some options and made the whole process a little bit smoother. So first of all, you need to start with the avatar that you would like to register your accessory to. So I have some women's shoes, so I've added the female avatar to my 3D window. Next, we go up to avatar and register accessory. So we've made some improvements to the overall layout of the window, the options, as well as how this feature works. So I'll go over them one by one. The first one's really simple. Your accessory type used to default to hair, and now it is open for you to choose. And in that drop-down menu, you'll find hair, shoes, glasses, and earrings. And for this demonstration, I'm going to be going with shoes. And once I select shoes, you'll notice that I have the options to select from heels or flats, and it's just going to make that fitting and registration process a lot cleaner. Now next, you still need to load the file just like before. And the exciting news is that previously only FBX files were supported, but from 7.3, you can now register with OBJ and DAE file types. Shoes that I want to register, and OK. Now, another update is that previously when we were registering an accessory that was created in another software, if the position, size, or axis did not match, as you can see here, I have a tiny little shoe, you were unable to do anything about it. You needed to go back to the 3D software that you created it in and make your corrections. But as you can see, from 7.3, I'm able to adjust the axis as well as the scale within the registry window itself. And you'll also have access to the gizmo in order to modify the position to make sure it all lines up correctly and you have a beautifully fitting shoe at the end of the registration process. But that's not all. We've also made it a lot easier to create pairs. So you might have already seen I have an option in my registry window for mirror creation. So obviously I need a left and a right shoe, but I only need to bring one of them into Clo in order to register it. I don't need both of them. By toggling on mirror creation, Clo is automatically going to create my pair. How good is that? And if the automatically generated position is not perfect, you are still able to freely adjust it, which is going to be really helpful. Now, next up is the ability to auto create your thumbnail. Previously, you could only create a custom image. So if you forgot to create one, you had to go back and make it and then get back into your registry window. But from 7.3, you can use an auto-generated thumbnail image. So if I select this option and press save, Going to complete the registry process without having to go back and create a thumbnail. Now, next up, I know that you're really going to appreciate this one. I mentioned that we can use OBJ and DAE files. You can now also automatically register accessories within Clo from Clo patterns themselves. So this is going to be really helpful because I know a lot of Clo creators are making all sorts of accessories with Clo patterns. So from 7.3, there's no need to export it as an FBX and bring it back in. You can now register it directly simply by selecting all of your pattern pieces. Here I have a pair of shoes again, a pair of flats, so I'll go through this option and it's identified my pattern selection. And if I wanted to exclude any of these, you can obviously scroll through and check and uncheck those items that are applicable. And you'll notice that you still have the option for mirror creation, just like we did when we were using other 3D file types, and you still have the option to auto-generate a thumbnail image. Now, once we save this out, it is going to keep the accessories in the 3D window and remove all of the pattern pieces from the 2D window. So make sure that you've already saved your project if you want to use it or go back to it at any time. Now, one more thing on our registration updates is that we're now able to also just select the pattern pieces, and rather than going up to the menu, you can simply select it and right click and you'll find the option to register it as an accessory. You can convert to trim just like before, and you'll now find the avatar accessory option is there, and it just brings us back to that same place in our registry window. So the process here would be exactly the same. It's just a bit of a different way to get there. So those are our improvements for the registry accessory process. I hope it's inspired you to get creative and start customizing your own accessories in Clo. Up next, from version 7.3, avatars created in DAZ 3D are super easy to convert to Clo avatars. So that means no more import, export, extended workflow. It is now a much simpler process. So let's start by going up to the main menu for avatar, and you'll find the option to auto convert to avatar. And then we're presented with this window. So the 3D body file is going to be our DAZ avatar in FBX format. And please note that you do need to export it from DAZ as FBX with rigging. Now, during the process of loading the avatar, Clo will automatically recognize it as a DAZ file, and it will automatically recognize the gender for Genesis 8 and 8.1. For the converting options, you have the ability to use Clo skin style, though I assume most of the time you want to maintain the avatar skin, and you can convert with rigging only or with size editable. And if you have hair and shoe accessories attached to your avatar, which I do here, you can see I now have saved paths for hair, shoes, as well as my avatar. Clo will automatically recognize these accessory assets, save them out as accessory files, and you will then be free to use them with other DAZ avatars of the same Genesis version. Now that's really useful, and it's going to make your work with DAZ avatars in Clo really easy, but I do want to mention that there can be a lot of variation between Genesis versions and how each individual creator has set up their DAZ asset. So you will find some exception cases depending on the asset. So please refer to the manual on the Clo website for detailed compatibility conditions, and you'll find there as well the export settings that you'll need to apply when you're moving it out of DAZ. So this feature is going to be continuously improved so you can convert and use DAZ avatars as well as accessories more easily. And up next, we have some updates for our soft body simulation feature. And the first is that you'll now be able to use soft body simulation with converted avatars. So in addition to DAS supported avatars, any avatar that you've created in external software and converted with our auto convert feature will now be able to use soft body simulation. There are some restrictions around that I'll point out. So first of all, you must use closed skin style or size editable. This will in many cases result in some appearance changes as the original avatar conforms to meet the closed standards, and hopefully this will be improved to support rigging only in future releases. But for now, size editable and closed skin style are available. So here is my converted avatar in the size editable format. Now when I click it, over here in my property editor, you'll now see the option to toggle on soft body simulation, and you can adjust the body stiffness settings just like when you're working with a Clo avatar. And down in the corner here, we can see soft body is on. And up next, I know you're going to love this one. From our new release, you are able to use soft body simulation with animation. So from our phase 1 release in version 7.2, soft body was only available for static avatars, but from 7.3, you can toggle on your soft body simulation, head into animation mode and record with your soft body simulation on. I know you're going to have a lot of fun with this, creating a lot more realistic human body movements to go with your beautiful cloth simulation. And as you can see in this super simple example for today, if I go ahead and press play, my animation now works with soft body. And next on our avatar improvements, we've made some improvements to how you can work with avatar joints. So the first update that we've made is just making it a little bit easier, especially for beginners, to identify what this is. So it used to be called X-ray joints, and now it's called avatar joints, just for clarity. And if I toggle this on, you'll notice that from version 7.3, I'm now still able to see the complete avatar form with my joints. So it's no longer a grayed out ghost figure with the joints only visible. So you're going to be able to not only more easily manipulate the avatar joints, but see how that's affecting the rest of the avatar form. So you'll now be able to see everything really clearly, and hopefully this makes it nice and easy for you to create dynamic avatar poses without too much fuss and going back and forth and checking your form and then going back to your avatar joints. In version 7.3, we have also made some improvements to our fit map. So in previous versions, only the location of the contact point between the garment and the avatar could be identified with the show pressure point map. So we've revamped this in 7.3, and show pressure points has been updated to pressure map, which is going to allow you to more comprehensively check the pressure areas that the garment is exerting on the body of the avatar. Now note that simulation must be applied for our map to display anything at all, but very helpfully, alongside my cursor, Clo is giving me an instruction. I need to simulate in order for my fit map to be displayed. Now you can use normal simulation or accurate fitting simulation, and for a good fitting workflow, it's accurate fitting simulation that's going to be most appropriate, as it's going to accurately reflect the properties of the fabric. And once I simulate the garment, notice that I now have a comprehensive fit map displayed over the body of the avatar. And note that my fabric changes to translucent surface just to make it easy to identify which areas of the avatar's body are under pressure from the garment. And to get a much more extreme example, let's apply some shrinkage to my pattern pieces. 50% shrinkage, quite a great deal smaller. Now if I simulate, you can see the color of my map changes, and I'm able to see the avatar's body is under a lot more pressure, especially around the shin and the knee area. And I am able to more deeply investigate by clicking on the fit map. The area that my cursor lands is going to display the unit of pressure. And in order to change those pressure units, you can do so by going up to Preferences and your Fit Map Preferences. And here you'll find a tab for pressure. Here you're able to make some manual adjustments to your units of measure as well as update your color display. And onwards to our materials improvements. The first one I want to go over with you is that you can now close the end of your piping trim. So previously you had no ability to do that, so we've added it from version 7.3 so that you can create much more realistic looking garments with accurate finishes. So in order to demonstrate that, let's go ahead and create some piping along the bust detail of my dress. So I'll quickly just place this down, simulate to take effect to it. And if we get in nice and close, you can see by default, the piping end remains open. And for clarity, let's have a look at the other side. And this one is open as well. And the good news is from 7.3, we're now able to finish off the end just like you would in a real garment situation. If I get my edit piping tool and look over into the properties editor, you'll notice I have a menu item for finishing and I can finish off the start and the end. A small but much requested update that makes it easier for you to finish off your piping as you would in a physical garment. Up next for materials is an update to the ability to change the length of the zipper. So from version 7.3, you can now adjust the length a lot more intuitively in the 3D window. So previously the zipper had to be created until the end of the pattern, and if the zipper was created shorter than the pattern length or it was falling outside, it had to be deleted and recreated, but no more. From version 7.3, the process of editing the length of your zip is going to be a lot more intuitive. So if we take a look at the back of this dress, the zipper has been created at a different length than the pattern. So I don't need to delete and recreate anything. I can use this Edit Zipper tool and just select my zipper, and just like when you're creating it or when you're doing operations like editing your sewing, you can just grab the endpoint, drag and drop it to adjust it. And you will need to do that on both sides of your zipper, and it's as easy as that. We've also made a few improvements to puckering, and the first of these is that you're now able to remove symmetry from puckering, just like you're able to do with top stitching. So in previous versions, in order to have an asymmetric puckering detail, you did need to remove symmetry from your patterns. And of course, if you had any further pattern modification work required, this would be very inconvenient. But from 7.3, I'm pleased to tell you, you can now disable puckering symmetry just like you're already able to do with your top stitching. So let's zoom on in here. Our jean fly front is a really great example. We want puckering on the fly facing side only, and I can remove symmetry with my edit puckering tool, select it and remove linked editing. Now, once linked editing is removed, you are free to make any changes to your puckering without it affecting the symmetric pattern. So in this case, I'm going to delete it. And if you can see in the 3D window, the puckering on the opposite side of my pant is maintained. And next, we also have added a new file type so that you're able to create, save, and load puckering material properties. So I'll zoom through the customization process for some puckering that I'm going to place on my hem here, and maybe I want to reuse this again on other jean hem style. Then you can press save, and you'll find that we have a new file type, PTP, for puckering. And you can save that out and reuse it on other projects, share it within your team, whatever you need to do really easily. We also have some updates to our elastic, which means it will no longer be treated as a fabric, which means it will no longer appear in print layout and you no longer need to nest it in order to estimate its quantity and do things like bring it into your tech pack. From version 7.3, it is now regarded as a trim, which has a few really important implications, which I'll show you. So first of all, print layout, elastic would appear as a fabric along the top. If I select it, you can see it's nowhere to be found. So rather than a fabric, we do classify it as a trim, which means we can do things like export it to our web tech pack, which just aligns a lot more closely with how things are commonly done in a production setting. So to illustrate, let's go into the bill of materials editor and you can see there's now an item for elastic and it no longer needs to be nested in order to display its quantities here. So the width and the length as well as the type will all be automatically populated. If you've got the same elastic applied to a few different patterns, the quantity is going to appear as a tally of all of those lengths. And if you've applied elastic to binding, again, the length and width are going to be automatically calculated and they'll appear here in the BOM editor. We've also made an improvement to our seam taping. Previously in Clo, you would have seam taping appear as you can see it at the moment, but now if I select my pattern edge, go into my property editor, you now have the option to extend and it will bring your seam taping all the way to the pattern edge. We've also made some updates to our add print feature. Until now, when you were adding a print using the add print button, the normal map needed to be manually loaded and you needed to adjust it yourself. Now from 7.3, we've added a new feature that's just going to allow you to do this automatically. So let's take a look at the workflow. First step, of course, is you want to hit that add print button. And when your print first applies, there won't be a normal map. It will be your choice whether or not you want that reflected, as there's plenty of cases in print application where the visible fabric texture is not there. So if you do want it, it's just a matter of selecting your print and in the property editor, you'll find a new item and you can just turn on use same normal map and keep a close eye on the bag. As I do so, you can see the crocodile leather starts to come through. And it's important to note that this is linked with the fabric, so you're not going to be able to manually adjust it. If there's any changes required for the normal map, you would do it on the fabric itself. If for any reason you do need two normal maps happening, you can still do that the old-fashioned way. Just toggle this off and you'll be free to use the normal map and add your own customizations. Just making it a little bit easier for you to work with the add print feature. Now we've also made some improvements to our edit texture tool, which is going to allow you to more seamlessly match up your textures when you have multiple pattern pieces and a pattern like this. And I just want to mention from the beginning that this is for visual purposes only. It's not going to align like this in your print layout. So let me show you how it works. First, we need the edit texture tool. Now I have some symmetric patterns here for my placket and my center front. I'll start with the center front. Right click and you'll find this new item, match up grain. Once you've selected it, like other match up functions, you need to select something to match it up to. So I've just clicked the reference line there as my center front and you'll notice then it aligns these two symmetric patterns. Now the placket is a good example because you can see that they are out of alignment as well. So right click, match up grain, select your reference line, and once you click that, you'll notice that they are nicely and seamlessly aligned. Now, of course, we've got 4 pattern pieces that we're looking at here. So if you need to make some further adjustments so that they're all aligning together, you can just use your edit texture tool as usual to adjust it and then have that automatically reflected on your symmetric pair by using the match up grain function. So this will make it really easy for you to align your textures, but as I mentioned at the beginning, it's not going to be reflected in print layout mode. It is for visual purposes only, so just keep that in mind. And this will also work with non-symmetric patterns, so I'll demonstrate that very quickly. Match up grain, and you can select any other reference line. As you can see, as you hover, the reference line will turn blue, and you just click it to confirm, and it aligns up beautifully. And without symmetry, of course, you'll just need to also set that on the opposite side of the body. But with this feature, it's super easy to do. Now, we've also made some pretty big updates to the Colorway editor. You want to pay attention to this one because I think you're going to like it. So before version 7.3, when we're working with the Colorway editor, everything was linked to materials, which meant I couldn't have two different fabrics for my tank top or my skirt within the Colorway editor. But from 7.3, these will now all be classified individually, which means that you can have different fabrics assigned in your Colorway editor for the same style, or you can assign different properties to the same fabric. So let me get in and show you how this works. So first of all, as you can see, I have 3 fabrics in this style, and if I hit the plus icon, the first thing that's going to happen is that rather than creating a linked copy of all of the same materials, I will now have duplicated these, which is what's going to give you the freedom to add totally different fabrics and trims and maintain it all together within the Colorway editor. So for example, I can use this fabric here, bring it into my object browser and replace any of the fabrics there in my second colorway. In previous versions, you could change the color or the texture, but you were restricted in terms of using different materials, and this is no longer the case. And when you are using a different fabric, don't forget to simulate, as it's going to change the drape of the garment. And just as you will have the freedom to create different fabrics within your colorway editor, you also have the ability to assign totally different properties. And the great news is that this freedom will also apply to your graphics. I know this has been long awaited. In previous versions, our graphic application would be locked to the dimensions and the position of what we had applied in Colorway 1. So we had to show and hide graphics in order to address that. But as you can see here, I'm going to create totally different dimensions for my Colorway 1 using a palm tree graphic. I'll size it up how I want, place it how I want, and when it comes to Colorway 2, I can just add that graphic and its dimensions are going to be based on its own image size, and I can place it and resize it how I want without affecting any other colorway. And you're also free to assign different materials to your graphics, making it easy to express a range of different graphic finishes and maintain it all together within the Colorway editor. Now, because we have duplicated our materials rather than linked them, these all now exist separately in the object browser. Note this new icon here, which allows you to show all colorways and materials or just the current colorway and material. And I have demonstrated with fabrics and graphics today, but the same principle will apply to all of your trims within the Colorway editor, from your top stitching to your zips and your buttons, as the materials will be duplicated as separate items in your object browser. They will no longer be linked. And the lucky last feature I have to share with you for Clo 7.3 is for our UV editor and our phase 1 release for UV auto packing. Whether you're working with denim workflows or external software, this one is a game changer. So let's head into UV mode. My patterns are all randomly placed as expected. And in previous versions, when we hit auto pack, the arrangement wasn't very clever and you had to do quite a lot of manual work yourself. But watch as I miraculously press this button. Clo is now going to optimize the placement and neatly pack everything into UV01. How good is that? And that is a wrap for the 7.3 new features webinar. There's so many more features that we can't squeeze in, so please do check out the Clo website and have a look at the new features. There might be things that I didn't cover today that are super relevant to you, but we hope that you enjoy. As always, we appreciate your feedback. Everything we've done is designed to make your life easier and your work a lot more enjoyable, whether you're working in a production environment or you're an independent creator. And as I mentioned throughout the webinar, there will be some more detailed workflow videos on some of our key features, Fabric Creator, what the updates to Colorway mode mean. So do like and subscribe to the Clo YouTube channel. We'll have some of that content for you soon. But for now, thank you so much for joining today's webinar. It's always a thrill to be able to introduce these new features to you, and we really hope that you enjoy.